Welcome, horror lovers, to Real Talk Horror. I'm your host, Josh Bell, your guide into the shadows where nightmares are born, suspense is masterfully crafted, and the truly strange thrives. If you're tuning in, it means you're ready to explore the unsettling corners of cinema, the ones that send shivers down your spine and linger in your mind. Today, we're continuing into Phase 3 of our deep dive into the cinematic universe of John Carpenter, a director who's not just a filmmaker, but a master architect of fear. Carpenter has gifted us with some of the most iconic horror moments of all time. Think about it. The relentless shape lurking in Halloween, the claustrophobic terror of The Thing, the unrelenting tension of Assault on Precinct 13. These films have defined the genres for decades. But tonight's feature is different. It's a bit more enigmatic, often overshadowed by Carpenter's larger-than-life classics. Yet, for those in the know, it's a haunting masterpiece, and one of my 3 most watched John Carpenter films. Not necessarily my favorite, but most watched. We're talking about Prince of Darkness, Carpenter's 1987 foray into a realm where science collides with religion, where the mundane becomes the monstrous, and where evil isn't just a concept, it's a palpable, creeping force. Now, if you haven't seen it yet, let me set the tone. Prince of Darkness isn't a horror film that lunges at you with cheap jump scares. This is cosmic horror, a genre that thrives on the fear of the unknowable. Imagine The Exorcist meeting 2001: A Space Odyssey, but filtered through Carpenter's meticulous lens. It's a slow-burning nightmare, a movie that doesn't just show you terror, but pulls you into its grip, leaving you questioning the very fabric of reality. And here's the thing. Prince of Darkness occupies a unique space in Carpenter's career. It's part of what fans call his Apocalypse trilogy, sandwiched between the icy paranoia of The Thing and the nightmarish insanity of In the Mouth of Madness. Yet, for reasons we'll explore, it's often treated as the trilogy's underdog. For me, and for a growing cult of devoted fans, it's nothing short of a hidden gem. I'll tell you now, by the end of the episode, I'm going to stand firm on my rating. This film is layered, atmospheric treasure that deserves more love than it gets. And tonight we'll unpack why. So what makes this movie special? How does it tap into such primal fears while weaving a tale that's cerebral and creepy? Why is it worth revisiting or discovering for the first time over 3 decades later? Grab your crucifixes, dust off your quantum physics textbooks, and maybe leave a light on. We're heading into the dark. A Prince of Darkness kind of dark. The Prince of Darkness is a film that manages to be both deeply unsettling and intellectually engaging. A rare combination even in the rich landscape of 80s horror. This movie wastes no time establishing its eerie tone. It opens with a chilling setup. Donald Pleasance, in another collaboration with Carpenter after Halloween, plays a nameless priest, an everyman of faith, but one clearly haunted by something far beyond the realm of Scripture. He stumbles upon a hidden secret buried deep within an old, decaying church in Los Angeles. Now, this isn't your typical dusty relic or forgotten artifact. No, in the church's basement lies a massive, mysterious cylinder filled with swirling green liquid. Right away, you know this isn't going to be just another haunted house story. This isn't a relic of the church's past or some leftover science experiment. This thing is ancient, sentient, and undeniably malevolent. And Carpenter doesn't hold your hand here. He lets the visuals, the cryptic nature of the Brotherhood of Sleep, and the mounting sense of unease do all the heavy lifting. The Brotherhood of Sleep, by the way, is a shadowy religious sect with a name that's as creepy as it is intriguing. They've been guarding this thing for centuries, seemingly dreading the day it would stir from its ominous dormancy. Donald Pleasance's priest knows he's in over his head, so what does he do? He brings in reinforcements. But instead of rallying the church or calling on more men of faith, he turns to science, a team of physicists, grad students, and researchers led by the enigmatic Professor Burak, played by the ever-compelling Victor Wong. From here, Carpenter does something brilliant. He pits science and religion not as adversaries, but as two sides of the same coin, against an evil that transcends both. Here's where Prince of Darkness really shines. The film takes what could have been a straightforward possession story or monster flick and injects it with layers of philosophical and existential dread. What starts as a scientific inquiry into the nature of the swirling green liquid slowly spirals into something much darker and more complex. The liquid isn't just some ominous goo. It's a vessel for an ancient cosmic evil. It's primal, intelligent, and infinitely dangerous, threatening to awaken and engulf not just the characters, but the entire world. This is Carpenter operating on a level few directors ever dared to in the 80s. The film isn't just a battle of good versus evil. It's an exploration of belief systems, what we hold true, why we cling to them, and how fragile they are when faced with the incomprehensible. Prince of Darkness takes you to a place where neither science nor faith can provide solid footing, forcing you to confront the terrifying idea that some things in the universe are beyond explanation, beyond salvation, beyond hope. Now let's talk about the characters, because they're the ones who bring this slow burn nightmare to life. Donald Pleasance as the priest he's phenomenal. He's not a man of unshakable faith or confidence. Instead, he's deeply flawed. He's terrified, uncertain, utterly human. You can see the weight of the situation breaking him down bit by bit, which makes his performance even more relatable and compelling. Lisa Blount's Catherine serves as the heart of the story. She's a brilliant and driven character, someone who approaches the chaos with logic and intellect, but doesn't lose her humanity in the process. Her journey and her ultimate role in the film's climactic moments is both heartbreaking and heroic, and they leave a lasting impression. Then we have Victor Wong's Professor Burak. Wong is perfect in this role. He blends scientific rigor with a deep philosophical curiosity. His dialogue is packed with thought-provoking lines, the kinds that make you pause and think, "Phew, that's deep," before the next horrifying scene jolts you back into the moment. The supporting cast, Jameson Parker and the rest, the team of researchers, scientists, and students adds to the tension. Each character brings their own perspectives, strengths, and inevitably their fears to the table. As the evil begins to spread, infecting and possessing members of the group, the sense of isolation and paranoia become almost suffocating. Carpenter again is a master at building tension, and in Prince of Darkness, he ratchets it up a whole nother notch. The pacing, it's deliberate, like the slow, ominous swirl of the green liquid. You're drawn in, you're hypnotized. And just when you think you've got a handle on what's happening, the horror explodes. People are infected. Reality begins to warp. The film shifts into this full-blown chaos, but never without a sense of control. And that's where the real magic is. Carpenter doesn't just rely on gore or cheap scares. He uses sound design, lighting, atmosphere to create a pervasive undercurrent of dread. It's not just about what's happening in the church. It's about the feeling that something much bigger, much worse is looming just outside of our understanding. Prince of Darkness is, in a word, relentless. There is no slowdown. There is no break to catch your breath. It's a cosmic nightmare that doesn't just aim to scare, it aims to leave you shaken and grappling with the same questions the film raises. What do we really know about the nature of evil, about reality, and about our place in the universe? This movie is a slow burn masterpiece, a film that grips you tight and doesn't let go. And trust me, once it gets under your skin, it stays there. Now we'll step behind the camera and uncover how Prince of Darkness came to life. It's a fascinating story of creativity thriving under constraints, proving that sometimes, as is the case with John Carpenter, limitations breed innovation. Made on a modest budget of just about $3 million, Prince of Darkness was the second of Carpenter's collaborations with Alive Films. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Alive Films, here's the scoop. They gave Carpenter a rare gift in the world of Hollywood: the freedom to create his vision without too many corporate hands meddling in the process. Sounds like a dream, right? Well, there was a catch. Carpenter didn't get access to the blockbuster level resources that he'd had with some of his bigger projects. But did that slow him down? Not even close. In fact, it pushed him to double down on his strengths. It forced him to get creative, to make a film that felt more personal, atmospheric, even experimental than many of his larger budget works. Now, let's talk about how Carpenter wore multiple hats again on this film. Not only did he direct the film, he wrote the screenplay, this time under the pseudonym Martin Quatermass. And if you're wondering where the name comes from, it's a cheeky nod to the classic British sci-fi series Quatermass in the Pit. For Carpenter, this wasn't just a little Easter egg for genre fans. It was a signaling that he was diving into the same thematic waters. Like Quatermass, Prince of Darkness explores the collision of ancient evils, the realm of science, and the supernatural. It was like Carpenter was saying, I'm playing in that eerie intellectual sandbox, and I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty. But there's more. Carpenter didn't stop at directing and writing. No, he also composed the film's score. And again, it's unforgettable. If you hadn't heard it, you're missing out. It's haunting and minimalistic in the best, most Carpenter way. The score pulses through the film like an ever-present heartbeat, keeping the tension high and the atmosphere oppressive. It's almost like the soundtrack itself is warning you, something is very wrong. The way Carpenter uses sound to shape the atmosphere and how he uses it to build dread and without overwhelming the scene, it's subtle, but when it hits hard. And speaking of hits, can't miss on the casting, Donald Pleasance, already well known for his role as Dr. Loomis, returns. Here he plays that nameless priest who uncovers the film's central mystery. And Pleasance brings an incredible sense of gravitas to the role. He doesn't just play a man with a faith, he plays a man who is desperately out of his depth, struggling to understand the unimaginable horror unfolding before him. That vulnerability is what makes his performance so compelling. He's not the typical hero we might expect. He's a man doing his best to keep it together in the face of something way beyond human comprehension. Victor Wong, if you're a fan of Big Trouble in Little China, you'll recognize him as the wise and eccentric Egg Shen. In Prince of Darkness, he plays Professor Birack, the physicist who leads the scientific team trying to decipher the mystery of the green liquid. Birack is a fascinating character. He's a man of science, but his worldview is deeply philosophical. He's trying to understand not just the liquid, but the bigger existential questions that come with it. Wong's performance is brilliant because it's never preachy or on the nose. He delivers the lines with a blend of science and theology that adds a layer of intellectual depth to the film that could have easily fallen flat in lesser hands. And for the rest of the cast, while at the time none of them were big household names, maybe Jameson Parker and Peter Jason, but their performances work to the film's advantage because they feel real. They're flawed, scared, and absolutely unprepared for what's about to happen. And that authenticity, the sense that these are just ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances, makes the horror feel more immediate and relatable. Carpenter knows that the best way to make you feel fear is to make you care about the characters, and he succeeds. When it comes to the technical side of things, Carpenter's resourcefulness is again on display. With that limited budget, he had to get creative to create the atmosphere that the film so desperately needs. And let me tell you, he knocked it out of the park again. With lighting, the shadows dominate the screen, setting the tone for a nightmarish experience. The church itself, with its dimly lit corridors and hidden chambers, almost become a character in their own right. The space feels alive, twisting and shifting with the growing sense of dread. And then there are the practical effects. This was 1987, remember? CGI was still a few years away from being a major player in horror films. And Carpenter was never one to rely on digital effects when he could use practical ones. And thank God for that. Because the film's practical effects are part of what makes it so memorable. The possessed characters with their jerky, unnatural movements are utterly disturbing. The swirling green liquid in the cylinder, though simple, is visually striking and eerie. And the best part, many of the effects were achieved with ingenuity. For example, the liquid wasn't created with some computer trickery. It was just a tank of water, carefully lit and filmed with the liquid swirling thanks to clever choreography. It's a testament to Carpenter's ability to make something terrifying out of very little. And speaking of ingenuity, let's talk about the film's reception. When Prince of Darkness was released, it didn't set the box office on fire. It made about $14 million, which isn't bad for a film on such a tight budget, but it also wasn't the kind of runaway success that some of Carpenter's films had. Critics were mixed. Some praised its ambition and atmosphere. Others found it slow and confusing. But here's the thing again, over time, it has aged so well. It's garnered a loyal cult following, and many fans now regard it as possibly Carpenter's most underrated work. It's a film that, while not a commercial smash, has found its place in the pantheon of horror classics. Prince of Darkness wasn't made under ideal circumstances, but Carpenter's passion, ingenuity, and resourcefulness transformed every limitation into a strength. The film oozes atmosphere, creativity, and of course that signature Carpenter touch. If you have ever doubted that great art can come from restrictions, Prince of Darkness is proof that sometimes the best things happen when you're forced to make the most of what you have. So let's look at John Carpenter's signature style in Prince of Darkness. If you're familiar with his body of work, you already know that Carpenter has a distinct style, a way of crafting horror that's instantly recognizable, and Prince of Darkness here is no exception. In fact, this film takes all the elements we love about Carpenter and it amplifies them, and it makes it stand out in his already impressive catalog of work. Starting with atmosphere, because if there's one thing that he excels at, it's building atmosphere. Carpenter doesn't just build tension with what's happening on screen, he's a master at using what isn't happening, creating a sense of unease simply through silence, shadow, and space. In Prince of Darkness, the church at the heart of the story is more than a backdrop. It's an integral part of the story. The church feels abandoned, decaying, and ominous, almost as if the very building is hiding secrets. And you know that the moment you step inside, you're not leaving unscathed. The architecture, the oppressive silence, and the strange occurrences all add to the claustrophobia and tension. Every hallway, every shadow feels alive, pressing in on the characters, and by extension on the audience. Carpenter's slow burn pacing builds layer by layer. It's a technique we've seen before in films like The Thing and The Fog, where isolation and paranoia permeate every frame. In Prince of Darkness, Carpenter takes that same sense of unease and turns it into something more metaphysical, an ancient evil that doesn't just lurk in shadows, but seeps into the very fabric of reality itself. Now, speaking of atmosphere, the soundtrack, you can count on the music in a John Carpenter film. Prince of Darkness, the music isn't just accompaniment, it's essential to the storytelling. Again, the synth-heavy score Carpenter composed is relentless. Again, it's minimalistic but incredibly effective. The score pulses through the film like the heartbeat. It's subtle but ever present, creating a hypnotic, almost suffocating atmosphere, ratcheting up the tension in even the quietest moments. Carpenter's music works in tandem with the visuals, enhancing every scene and heightening the emotional stakes. It's not just about making things sound creepy. It's about using sound as a tool to make you feel the dread, to make you feel the weight of what's happening on screen. The music doesn't just accompany the action, it drives it. And what I love is how Carpenter uses that minimalism to his advantage, creating a constant undercurrent of tension that keeps you on edge, even when the film isn't actively scaring you. Visually, Carpenter's ability to craft unease is on full display here as well. His use of tight framing and unusual camera angles makes you feel trapped, just as trapped as the characters themselves. The church's claustrophobic spaces are shot with a deliberate tightness. You feel boxed in, stuck with the characters as they try to make sense of the supernatural chaos unfolding around them. But it's the mirror sequences that really stand out. Mirrors are typically symbols of reflection or self-examination in film, but here Carpenter twists that idea into something much darker. The mirrors in Prince of Darkness are gateways to another reality, one that's unsettling, dangerous, and foreign. The practical effects used in these sequences, while simple, are deeply effective. They don't rely on that flashy CGI, which at the time would have been a tempting option, but instead Carpenter relies on physical effects that ground the horror in reality. You're not just watching it unfold, you're feeling it. The realism of the practical effects combined with Carpenter's careful framing makes these moments of possession and supernatural terror incredibly visceral. Speaking of possession, Carpenter handles those unsettling moments so well. In many horror films, possession scenes are all about the visual spectacle, twisting heads, grotesque faces, or wildly exaggerated movements. But Carpenter keeps things a little more grounded here, using subtle physical changes in the characters to convey something deeply wrong. The jerky, unnatural movements of the possessed are more unnerving because they feel so raw, so visceral. There's a stillness that lingers before the horror hits, creating an almost unbearable tension. And when the possession takes hold, it's not flashy or over the top. It's eerie and disturbing, making it feel like something that could happen to you. And then there's the narrative. One thing that's always stood out about Carpenter's work is his ability to blur the lines between genres. And Prince of Darkness is a perfect example of that. At first glance, this is a typical supernatural horror film with its possession themes, creepy church setting, and sinister forces lurking just out of sight. But as the film unfolds, you realize it's so much more than that. Carpenter is working in a space where horror and philosophy collide. The film isn't just about scares, it's about what is scaring you and why. The narrative blends science and religion in a way that few other horror films have ever tried. The supernatural force at play here isn't just some malevolent entity. It's something far older, far more incomprehensible. The film plays with the idea that the true evil might not be a demon or devil at all, but a cosmic force that predates humanity, a force that exists outside of the rules we know. By blending these two realms, science and the supernatural, Carpenter creates a story that's as intellectual as it is terrifying. It's a film that makes you think about the nature of evil, belief, and the limitations of human understanding. It's one of the reasons Prince of Darkness sticks with you. What I really love here about Carpenter's approach is how he subverts my expectations. You go in thinking you're going to get a run-of-the-mill possession or demonic horror film, but what you get is so much deeper. Carpenter introduces the idea of cosmic horror, the idea that the universe is vast, unknowable, and indifferent to human life, and gives it a theological twist. The evil in this film isn't just some devil lurking in the dark. It's an ancient force beyond comprehension, one that defies logic and science. It's an intelligent, intellectual kind of horror, which is pure Carpenter. This blending of genres, this subversion of expectations, is part of what makes Prince of Darkness so unique, even within the crowded landscape of 80s horror. But what really makes it unmistakably Carpenter? It's the atmosphere. It feels like it's a vice around your chest. It's the score that gets under your skin and makes you feel things even when the action slows down. It's the visuals that trap you in the film's claustrophobic world, and it's the narrative that asks big questions about evil, science, and belief. Carpenter, at this time, doesn't just make horror films, he creates full-fledged experiences. And in Prince of Darkness, he's at his most ambitious and most unforgettable. Let's dive into the lasting impact and legacy of Prince of Darkness, because while it might not have been that box office juggernaut, it's carved out a place as a bona fide classic, and for damn good reason. Financially, it did okay. We mentioned the $14 million against a $3 million budget. Nothing groundbreaking, but definitely respectable, especially for a film with such a niche, borderline bizarre premise. But let's be real here. Box office numbers are just part of the equation when it comes to a film's true legacy. What really matters is how a movie resonates over time, how it sticks with audiences, how it burrows into pop culture's underbelly, and Prince of Darkness has definitely done that. It didn't light the world on fire when it was released. As we mentioned, critics and moviegoers at the time thought the pacing was a little too slow and the themes a bit too dense and philosophical for a horror film. But I think that's exactly why it's become a beloved cult film. It's the kind of movie that doesn't hand you everything on a silver platter. As the audience, you have to work for it. You have to earn its meaning. And with each subsequent viewing, the film reveals a little more of its genius. The more you peel back its layers, the intricate relationship between science and religion, the deep cosmic horror at play, the philosophical musings about the nature of evil and humanity's place in the universe, the more you begin to understand how ambitious this film really is. Carpenter wasn't just trying to scare us, he was trying to get us to think. And let's face it, how many horror films can really say that? Fast forward to today, and you can see Prince of Darkness influence all over the horror genre. It might not have been a smash hit in '87, but its impact on subsequent films is undeniable. Think of Event Horizon, which took the concept of sci-fi horror and cranked it up with a similar sense of cosmic dread. Or The Mist, which combines a palpable sense of hopelessness with otherworldly terror. And it's not just movies. You can see Carpenter's fingerprints all over modern horror games like Dead Space and Resident Evil, which blend that existential terror with grounded human fears. That ability to merge the tangible with the incomprehensible, that's Prince of Darkness. One of the key reasons this film has endured is because Carpenter wasn't afraid to challenge the audience. This is not a film that spoon feeds you the answers, and I love that about it. It's dense, cerebral, and often unsettling in ways that you don't fully understand until you've really let it sit with you. It's the kind of movie that dares you to think about big questions, the kind of questions that we don't often get to ponder in our day-to-day lives. What is the true nature of evil? What happens when science, which we rely on to explain the world around us, encounters something beyond comprehension? And can we even begin to understand the forces at work in the universe? Or are we just small, insignificant pieces in some larger, unknowable design? For fans of the genre, Prince of Darkness has become a touchstone, one of those films that every serious horror fan has to see at least once. It's part of what makes John Carpenter such a fascinating and important filmmaker. He wasn't just a master of horror, he was a master of ideas. He wasn't content to make just another slasher or demon possession movie. Carpenter wanted to push the boundaries of what a horror film could be, to make a movie that wasn't just about scares, but about something deeper, something more unsettling and thought-provoking. And Prince of Darkness does that. It's the horror film that asks you to reflect on your own beliefs and challenges the very notion of reality itself. And then, of course, there's the cult status. Horror fans, as you probably know, are some of the most passionate, dedicated moviegoers out there. Over the years, Prince of Darkness has been kept alive by this incredibly loyal fan base. It's a film that's found a home in midnight screenings, online forums, and countless deep dive analyses that continue to pour over every frame. It's because one of those films that people say, you have to watch this. And it's not because it's flashy or mainstream. It's because it's unique. It's unsettling. It's the kind of film that stays with you. And that's something truly special. The legacy of Prince of Darkness isn't just about how it influenced other works, though that is certainly a part of it. What really makes it stand out is how it continues to resonate with audiences today, especially with those who are willing to embrace its weird, cerebral, and terrifying vision. It's proof that sometimes the films that don't immediately find massive success are the ones that endure the longest. It's the films that challenge us, make us think, or make us uncomfortable that stay in our minds long after that initial buzz fades. So while Prince of Darkness may not have lit up the box office, it earned something far more enduring: a devoted fan base, a place in the pantheon of horror classics, and a permanent spot in the history of genre filmmaking. And let's be honest, when you look at Carpenter's body of work, that's exactly the kind of legacy you'd want from a film like this. A film that years later is still making us think, still making us question, and still scaring the hell out of us in the best possible way. So where does Prince of Darkness leave us in the end? For me, this film is a slow burn masterpiece, A horror experience that sneaks into your mind, refuses to let go. It's not the kind of movie that bombards you with scares or frights. This one creeps up on you, builds tension and unease layer by layer. The deliberate pacing might throw some people off, especially if you're used to faster paced or more in-your-face horror. But if you are a fan of John Carpenter's work, or you're just someone who appreciates a film that will make you think, then this is a must-watch. I give it a solid 8 out of 10. It's not quite the reach the iconic untouchable heights of Halloween or The Thing, but it's right up there for me with They Live as one of the most unique pieces of Carpenter's body of work. The way that it blends science, religion, and cosmic dread is something I think only Carpenter could pull off. Add in his signature style, the haunting atmosphere, the relentless synth-heavy soundtrack, the stark, chilling visuals, and you've got a film that's bold, creepy, and unforgettable. And again, one of the films I go back to more often than just about any other. It's a standout, not just in his filmography, but in the horror genre as a whole. I love how this film challenges you. It's not straightforward by the numbers horror flick. It asks big questions, makes you think about the nature of evil, and explores themes of science and belief that you won't find in the typical possession movie. It might not be the most conventional Carpenter film, but it's undoubtedly one of his most ambitious, and that's something we're celebrating. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive into Prince of Darkness, next time, we're taking a completely different turn. I know this is real talk horror, but we're doing the full deep dive on Carpenter, so we're going to look at Starman. This underrated gem shows a softer, more sentimental side of Carpenter than most people might expect. This is the side of Carpenter that's worth exploring. It'll be a nice change of pace from the usual darkness we explore. So don't miss the next episode as we continue our journey through Phase 3 of the Carpenter series. And as we wrap up today's episode of Real Talk Horror, I want to thank you for joining me as we dove into that eerie, thought-provoking world of Prince of Darkness. If you had even half as much fun listening to this as I did dissecting this cult classic, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, drop a review, and share the podcast with all your fellow horror enthusiasts. It's always great to hear from you, and I'd love to know, what did you think of Prince of Darkness? What does it make you think about? And for more updates, behind-the-scenes insights, fun horror trivia, and other movie general stuff, find us on Instagram and Threads at Real Talk. And of course, stay spooky out there. And remember, the scariest stories are always real.